Well, in a way, that's a good lead-in, because I think if there's a problem in the room, it's us. Because I think the average age in here is possibly, I'll go for 55. But when the lights go on, you could, in fact, in your feedback forms, you could put your ages, and then we can ask Teresa to do an analysis. So there's nothing wrong with being any age. But the point, of course, is that the age comes with its own rear view mirrors and headlights and anxieties and shared experience and what have you. And I would actually love it if there were 30 people in the room who were under 30. And it's not a complaint. It's it's to do with how, in a way, it's to do with the predicament that we're all in, is how do you create real sort of vitality of social, collective, genuine comprehension. And it, as my wife once heard on the bus in London, school children shouting, somebody said something, somebody said something else, and somebody shouted, "It's rhetorical." And then another voice said, "What's that mean?" And then another voice said, "It means you don't have to answer." And in a way, everything I'm going to say to you is rhetorical, because I heard a little voice earlier, which was a slightly snippy remark I heard when I was probably in my late 20s, I'm guessing. And it was a well-educated man who I worked with, who I liked very much and admired. And he used a word which I'd never heard, which was a generalist. And I remember it like, generalist was definitely not good. And I was privately thinking, I wonder if perhaps that's what I am. And it's a delicate subject. So what's lovely listening to these guys, you know, who just know everything about minerals and stone and geology. And I'm thinking I'm the sort of idiot who's walking down the street with a sort of fog of question marks around my head. And I admit that I think I am a kind of generalist. So what I'm going to do is to share that with you very briefly, visually. It's not a sort of point by point by point talk. But I think we've already had a conversation. I mean, we're all anxious. Everybody should be anxious. We don't even know whether COVID has just started. I mean, is this a pause? What is this? So one would have to say this is a very interesting time to be in. I'm a Londoner, and I don't think you choose to be a Londoner. It's something that happens to you. And if I meet young people on the bus in London and they start talking about it, and I say, well, if you fail to leave, you'll be a Londoner. It's quite rare to meet anyone in London who's from 3 generations. Very rare to meet the parents of the parents. Although I did do this once in a slightly framed event at John Soane, and I said that, and somebody put their hands up, and they were the child of the child of a child, continuous in London. It's a quite rare thing to meet. And I think we don't know how to talk about demography. We don't know how to talk about, you know, the word migration, emigration. You know, most of us don't really know who we are, and that you might have had a test and found out that you're a bit North African or something. But I think it's very odd that you live for a very relatively short time, certainly against what we've seen today, this description of the town. You know, we are a short incident in it. And in that time you form your opinions, and then your opinions are wrapped up in the next, the constant rolling. So this is about the rolling. So you're going to press buttons and I'm going to shut up. So it's called the Isle of Dogs because that's where some monarch kept his dogs, or her dogs. And it's wet and crappy, and the tide would come in and go out, and you know, it's the end of this river that drains southern England, and there was a period when it looked like that, and, you know, that's empire. That's getting pretty confident, Napoleonic. And, you know, plenty about the Isle of Dogs, and it's not even called that anymore. It's called Canary Wharf. And I suppose if I do have a theory, I think that is actually what this culture is about. That's how we are. And if you know anything about, as a lot of people here do, about materials, that's a really good piece of work. It's absolutely astonishing achievement. And, you know, bullying these pipes to go around the corner, and of course it's temporary, but it might be there for 5 years, you know, or 10. Next. So, am I in everyone's way? I'll go right over here. Okay. So the word developer, very delicate, but, you know, we've been looking at these buildings and we say, you know, sometimes we know what power or what money or what vanity or what bit of good luck put a building somewhere at a certain moment. And that week, maybe somebody had seen in the newspaper, oh, there's this chap Palladio, he looks really interesting. He's in Italy and he's doing it like this. We could copy, because we're England. We're not that inventive. The Romans were here, they built us roads and we forgot them for 1,000 years. And so I think how we live is jolly odd. And I live near this. This is fresh. It'll be finished. You can buy one if you want, you know, and you can believe what it says or not. And already you know I'm the sort of person I'll probably die of laughter walking past this, you know. And it's not because I'm being spiteful or mean, it's that I don't really know how to handle. I mean, this happened in my latter lifetime, this ability to make things which are really surfaces, hence my earlier remarks about we're going to get a new kitchen top. And this, in a way, is a kind of culture of kitchen toppery. Next. So, you know, history is jolly weird, and I think if it was taught well, the word would never be used. In school, there should be a door, and it said, you were never there, and it would be a really successful subject, because everybody would want to go in there and find out about this thing, this past. So, you know, the forces that make things and the energies that make them, the crafts, the knowledges, the haste. There was a really beautiful pillbox on the west side of Oxford, which during lockdown somebody demolished, you know, and I'm extremely pissed off about it because I really admired this pillbox, but it's going under some extension of the A40. Next. So the point I'm probably trying to make is that so much of it is unaccountable. So I've enjoyed today so much, and it's nice to be with people who care, but actually for many, many years in some sort of little snippy planning permission fight, which I've either been involved in or heard about, I've wondered, and who gave the cars planning permission? I really don't like the colour of that one. You know, so in fact the period in which we're living is really streets which are just rows of these shiny things, of which I have one, it's not very shiny. So there's something to do with surface, lamination, we talked briefly about polish, the these probably first cast, I'm guessing, sort of 1825. You know, John Nash probably ordered 500 of them. But they have descended into, I don't even know whether that's actually was sent to me by a friend, but I don't even know whether that's, I'm not even, as my children would have said, I'm not sure it's metal. So this feeling that's around us about what used to be called the make is very odd. The achievement of leaving your banana like that is, I mean, that's an art. It's like, I mean, it can't have been there for more than 5 minutes when I passed, but it's like, wow. Next. And I think one of the things about today is that I've enjoyed is that it makes you look. And it makes you look, and while you're looking, you're wondering. So you're probably wandering and wondering simultaneously. And things that's more or less my age backwards. No, it's less than my age backwards from when I was born. And I don't quite know which those vestries or parishes are having an argument about what, but they meant it. And, you know, there was a clerk who said, it's going to be like this, and it's still there. Or I forget the name of the street in Deptford where somebody told me that the door heights are relative to your status in the Navy and how tall your hat was, and which may be a fable, but I can tell you that the street is just the most brilliant argument about door heights. And I mean, I know there are people here who really know this stuff, so I'm being quite careful, but you know, obviously you can throw into that quality of whether something is made or rather if something is, I would say, wrought, or if it is cast. And we've talked quite a lot about stucco today, you know, which is typical England, you know. We really can't get the stone. Next. So I live in one of those streets where everything is sort of held together with ticky-tacky and it looks nice in a estate agent's window, but 1840s, pre-railways, made of complete rubbish, incredibly, I mean, ridiculously badly made, but with sort of nicey nice bits, but made by illiterate children for the greater part and delivered to site. I also work quite near the Barbican, and I have admired this Italian cafe for a long time. And during lockdown, it got a coat of paint, which has sort of made it, as some of you will know, Jasper Johns. I mean, it's just the energy that's sort of in this, the levels of belief that are sort of stored in there. And then while I was looking at it, I went, oh my God, the Barbican. And I think that's the point I'm making, is that it is unaccountable. We're unaccountable. We're unaccountable to each other. I think you implied this several times. There's something very delicate about what you can, as it were, Prince Charles, and what you have to accept, or what we have to accept, is the roly-poly of being alive. I mean, you know, I'm a child of... In fact, we only stopped having milk delivered because it was stolen. You know, it would disappear or it was off. You know, so none of this 30 years ago existed. And, you know, I'm not even talking about the planet. It simply didn't exist. And this, of course, you know, this is an ancient Greek form. You know, it's the amphora came through in your pointer. Next. So a few years ago, I was invited to Havana, and one thing I did moderately well at school was to learn Spanish, which of course is absolutely not what is spoken in Cuba. And this is, I was about to say Franco, this is Castro with his brother. They were nice bourgeois boys, and there was a very good, probably American-financed golf course in Havana, and they were playing golf 1961 or 2, same time as the Barbican. And one said to the other, we're going to have to fuck this up. We can't have golf courses in the revolution. What shall we do? And the other one, apparently, or whichever one said it, said, art school, that would be good. We could have an art school. And then the other one said, but where would we put it? Por aquí, here. So this is 1961 to, filled. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine. I've never been in a revolution. What that must mean to have built this ballet, and some of you I'm sure know about Cuban ballet, but ballet art, I forget what else, but a complex. And of course, as I was looking through my slides, I found these guys who are the Smithsons, Eduardo Palozzi, and I think that's Nigel Henderson. And I have a friend who's so clever that he could read what it said at the back. And on the Tate website, it says street unknown. And that evening, Patrick said, it's Limerston Street in Chelsea. So, and he'd even by that time identified what had gone missing in the street and which bits were still there. So if you like doing that kind of thing, the cars will have gone for sure. And there'll be yellow lines. But I think in a way, those two pictures, I grew up, I didn't know, I did meet Eduardo a couple of times, but I didn't know these people, but they were sort of they were like a field of energy. They were like, we all have, that's what it means to be young and have desire. So they were in these conditions thinking very similar thoughts to this, and this is the Cuban story we all sort of know. There's more to come about that next. So, as a child, they demolished the Euston Arch, but I come from the sort of family where no one would have said, let's go down and see them demolish the arch. I don't remember it even being mentioned, but I feel very shocked that I knew nothing about it, and it's gone. And then we make posters of it, and the posters are not very good, and then they chop off the important bit, and then there's HS2, which I know a thing or two about, and then I use the tube a lot, and I don't know whether that's Holden, but that is really intelligent. I think that's Aldersgate East. I mean, the levels of intelligence in there within its moment, I don't know, 1936, 8. And of course, it's usually just full of people rushing to catch the tube. They're not going, this is an important building, or even an important service. Next. So, I'm aware that today is about geology and masonry, and I often think about, you don't really see much masonry in London. What you really see is sticky on stuff that is a touch Masonic, because actually it's a mud city and they made bricks and threw stuff up. Of course, one of the things about England is when you get into sort of serious preservation, this is one of those wallops, middle, upper, lower, or whatever, somewhere in Hampshire, where, I wasn't in the First War or the Second War. Even talking about this, you can hear I'm upset. Probably because I can't get any purchase on it. And it must have been very odd in the 20s that everybody, sort of half the people in this room who knew about masonry or sculpture, ended up making these things for a kind of mass grief. But of course, because of this, they end up, well, we could put some more bollards around them and more, and they end up sort of in the middle of roundabouts. And I sort of worry about, well, what does that now mean? Which is why I took the picture. Next. And meaning is really migratory. I mean, well, we're going to change the road anyway, and we'll just repave that bit, or, but this is done, it's not done unknowledgeably. And we've been talking about different handling of stone. There's a axing of stone. This is a very popular Cotswold, somebody who went to art school went, I'll make a mould and I'll make a small fortune and my children will go to private school. And all round, particularly around Cirencester, I have to say, I rather delight in this. I mean, it is mad. It is, and there's a word for a lot of what I'm talking about. That's a skeuomorph. That is a fake of a fake, if you like. And mostly we are living skeuomorphically. That's what the 2 pints of milk in the amphora, that's another skeuomorph. You can play skeuomorph competitions at home. Next. So you can hear my anxiety is genuine. And one way to relieve it is, I think quite a lot about how we got from, let's say, 1850 to 1910. And if you read Eric Hobsbawm, he gives a brilliant description of the British economy and the American economy and the German economy, and we are overtaken in about 1870. And at about that moment, we become seriously pompous. And I absolutely recognize all sorts of crafts, but I also feel very uncomfortable. I've always felt confused near this Baroque stuff, which of course is usually slim. And I know a man in Dorset who can do it. He can do you 1.5 inches, and you'll get even more on the boat. It's pretty much a stuck on. Not always. Also, if you like, there's a nice Greek pattern sport, which is to see how often you can spot a swastika. And they're everywhere. And of course, I think they were just in the groundwater from about, probably from about 1916. It was just there. And of course, it's an astonishingly brilliant symbol. But you'll, watch your Greek patterns and you'll find them. They'll be lurking. Next. This is Park Village Park Village West, which of course is a kind of, you probably know that the monarchy was broke, surprise, surprise. They needed some money. Somebody said, that farm, the lease is about to fall. It's off the new road, London's first bypass. Why don't we theatricalise it and we'll call it Regent's Park? And whether that's Decimus Burton or, I shouldn't think it's either of them actually, or John Nash. But this is gorgeous. I mean, I know a man who's got brackets that are about the right. And this is a quite la-di-da corner of London. And, I don't know whether that's going to hold the wall up. But these things give me small pleasures. And I'm here really, sort of Ruth and I share a dad. So we both independently met, Ruth actually worked with him, a man called Eric Robinson. I forget how I met him, but he took me, a lot of people like ourselves, down Upper Street in Islington, and he carried a ironing board sprayer, and he would go up to Masonry and go, which of course, this is before everyone was convinced that everyone was going to kill everybody in London with an ironing board sprayer. So he wouldn't be stopped, but he looked kind of crazy doing it. And then he'd go, look, and he would do all the things we've done today. He'd do felspar and stuff. And I think knowing him, or beginning to know him, led me to be curious about, in a generalist way, about geology. And I then discovered that the man who really pushed British English geology was Edwin Smith? William Smith, because he was digging canals. Duh. And if you dig a trench, you will notice that something might be happening. And I made an exhibition about 20 years ago, and he was in it, although only by his works. But I think that is a really good, if you don't understand this mad island, that's pretty good to get from Wales to Tilbury. Next. So that's more of him, and that's more of us. That's and you'll first spot the deliberate mistake is which county got lost and we tried to replace it. No, I know you've spotted it. And some of you can name it, but some of you can't because you're too young. I'll do it for you. Very difficult to cut out. It was Rutland, but when I bought it, Rutland was missing. And actually, I'll be unfair. My wife said, "You can't do colour, you've got no idea at all." And she took over. And there was some, I forget the detail, but it went wrong, and it came out as the wrong blue. And it was like, yes, but that makes it better. That's the replacement. Anyway, next. So, if you live in Europe, and I guess probably in Africa, probably anywhere, but not the USA anymore, you live near this. You live near vernacular. You live near, well, this is how we do it, or that's why we do it. And it's impolite to comment on somebody's accent or ask what their first language is. But the single most interesting thing about each other is why you like your like. And these books, which I probably first knew about in the late 60s, and then they sort of join up with various artists, like the Beshers, who I didn't think of as being I didn't think of them as crusading artists, but I now realize that they understood that the world was dissolving underneath them, and they were briefly fixing it for the record. I haven't got any pictures of theirs, but and you could say the same about Ed Ruscha in a different way. Next. So this is really how we live, I can't, there's no point me pointing at this and go sort of being spiteful or saying the person who put that up is a bad person, but I of course think these are crap bollards. I carry, what are these yellow lines everywhere, Just say you can't park anywhere in London and mark 4 places you can with a red dot. It would look better. But somehow that doesn't come into the politics. So actually, in order to remain sane, you don't want to be like me, but actually this is what we deal with, the top of that wall and the next bit behind all the time, and we deal with the past, and we deal with, the church was disappeared in 1942 and is back there again, but it's not the church. And in one way, I think it's incredibly, for that to be within a lifetime is pretty interesting, but it is unbelievably complicated, and I think everything that's been talked about has emphasized that for me. Next. So I pass this quite often. This is right next to Mornington Crescent. If you're interested in urbanism, I only found out this year. The reason there's no crescent, therefore it's ridiculous that it's called Mornington Crescent, is that the crescent where Sickert lived was stolen in the 30s, and that great big Carreras building was plonked on it. That's a bit of serious developer shit. So that's just over there, but it makes it very different when you go there. Right next to HS2, you can really feel deep politics, because Mornington Crescent must have been frightfully nice because it had gardens in front of it, but they vanished under that big 30s block. And this, when I'm coming here, I start to think about that. These are sort of out of control roof gardens. This must still be a squat or something. This is absolutely brilliant. You know, it's like Rome in 1500 or something. But this I find spooky. I know what it means. It means we didn't really, we won the First World War. No, we didn't. We just didn't lose it. And of course, I grew up with that. I grew up with this, you know, and I live with somebody who's very good at commenting on the typography and so forth. But and this is very knowledgeable to do that. So you don't have the moulding there. You accept that the city is very dusty and so forth. But it's very, I think what I'm trying to say is that to be responsible for all of this is very, very tiring. Next. I love a splay. I don't know much about the history of articulation. I was caught photographing this house because I'd become obsessed with that black plastic bag up the top, which is the first, right up on the top on the right-hand side. It's not very well shown. And that's been there for about 5 years. And I thought, oh, isn't that brilliant? That Tudor Beetham, you know, really not, for the most part, very good news. But the black plastic bag hadn't been invented, and it got a job, and it became a Tudor Beetham black plastic bag up the top. Anyway, I became more and more fascinated by this house and would sneak by and take photographs. And one day, I was caught, and this woman said to me, "Why do you keep photographing my house?" And she turned out she was quite nice, and I was able to sort of apologize and everything. But I had to explain to her I was really interested in how houses are articulated, how walls are articulated, and I'm not trained in structures. I know a bit about, you know, how the cardboard box works. And it turns out that her husband is a Welsh civil engineer, and this is the love of their life, and they've been cutting at it and fiddling with it. And unfortunately, I think this is just gorgeous. This is now, looks like that, and it'll soon be a nice house. But I guess what I'm admitting to is that I think process is incredibly interesting, and we're all in it. This is known to Teresa. This was a very sweet Italian man at the bottom of the Caledonian Road, where all the Italians, the northern Italians, because all the Italians were in Clerkenwell, the northern Italians mostly ran food shops. They either did terrazzo or they ran food shops. And he's the last person who had told me he can remember when the Caledonian Road was two-way. 1964. Which they then tried to make it two-way, and then they went, oh, it doesn't work. And God knows how much public money was spent on it, and then it was reversed, and it's now one-way again. Next, we're coming to the end. So, life is theatrical. This is St. James's. I was there the other week, a week ago today, and they were making a film in there. And I just thought, isn't that just amazing? We want better light. The whole of the outside of St. Side and east side of St. James's had these vast lamps belting through the windows. And we should all carry that as a badge, I think, danger of death. That should be a T-shirt. Next. So I've really loved the fact that we've been so near rock, and the sense of, it's really affected my sense of masonry a lot, and that how it has to be won and dug and managed and hauled and transported. And this is the southernmost edge of the Cotswolds, as we call it, on a dry day and on a wet day. And this guy, who's a friend of ours, farmer, he can get that up into a full First World War set any time between November and March. It is absolutely amazing. How does he do that? Because the standard size of farm machinery is just unbelievable. And none of us can control that. So that's why everything now has a double gate, because everything is so wide. And he grows food. I understand a little bit about it economically, but it's not my subject. But we all have a political headache at the moment. Next. And that's part of the political headache. I don't live in Palma, and I haven't got a swimming pool. But that is, you probably saw that. It's as a live image. It's one of the most ferocious images I've ever seen, I think. Next. And I wanted to explain something because I'm sort of rather close to a court case. So if there's anyone here who knows the Greene family, personally, I would like to speak to you outside. But by completely legitimate means, I got this and a lot of the pictures, including the picture that I showed you, the Castro's picture of the art school. And that picture was taken by Greene. And it was in a job lot, and it was sold at Sotheby's, and somebody bought it, and by a complete accident, it came to me, or the scans came to me, and I made an artwork from it, or I did something, inverted commas, artistic with it, which was in the Havana Biennale, and was hugely successful because, of course, people in Havana were seeing 1960s in a way that they never would have done otherwise. And they were going, oh, look, we used to have those uniforms. Do you remember when the ice cream shop was on that corner and the theatre? So incredibly affecting for me to witness. So this is to show that things have origins and they wander through the world in surprising ways. And this is, you can see that Graham Greene had a nice place in Paris. And he wrote notes to himself and so on. But I'm now sort of a bit close to being told I'm a very naughty person for ever having done this. And there's nothing naughty about my behaviour at all. So I'm really trying to find the Greenes and go, look, it's kosher. Next. So that is maybe how we, I've never been frightened of a sunset. What a strange cliche a sunset is, that we all go out and look at it, or go for a walk on the beach, or whatever. That's not to say I can't extrapolate what it might mean, and there are even sayings. So there's something, obviously what I'm trying to say is that, it was always precarious, and we're in our moment of precariousness And everybody here cares. That's, and there are people here who know an awful lot about even know how volcanoes work. But what a puzzling task that is for us humans. Thank you very much. Sorry if I stood in front of you. Maybe it's lights on. Then you can see who asked the question. There must be lots of questions from the previous speaker, who I think Say it again.
An old-fashioned word. I think probably everybody's fully.
That's my feeling, but that's not for me to say.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And great way to end the North End, which actually is all we can do at the moment. Try and continue to think about some of the things we've been thinking about today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's really good, isn't it?
Thank you to everybody who's spoken today and yesterday. I mean, thank you for Ruth for being the person we can gather around, which you totally are. You're amazing.
What a triangle.
Thank you, the bear.
Square.
It's totally inspiring us to think about the particularities, characteristics of something that we think we might know, granite, but now we know that we don't know anything. Thank you to David for driving us through this fascinating programme. And thank you to Nick for speaking to us about Helston. Yeah, reinforcing what we see and giving us, I hope, courage to see it better. Thank you. And thank you, Nathan. I like to call Jason, but I don't know. Thank you for keeping us on time on the road. And thank you to Ollie for filming all of this, which has been quite stressful. But we hope we have some kind of record of this, and then we intend that we will be able to share that record with those of you who have been here, and also people who haven't been here. And thank you to Richard for amplification, which actually is the first time in this space that we've ever actually had mics and been able to hear really clearly, and it's made a huge difference. So thank you. And we all are around 55, so it helps.
Sorry if you're very much younger.
And thank you, Teresa and Cast, for
Yeah.